All right. So if you could you say your name and what organization you're a part of?
Yeah, I'm Evana Enabulele, and I am the housing coordinator for Clear the Land. Clear the Land's about owning their own land and labor, or our own land and labor. We are a cutie BIPOC housing collective, and I'm also part of Duke Seattle.
Sherae Lascelles, founder of Greenlight Project, Hawk Swap, and do harmony action policy for sex workers, but specifically for Black and Brown and cutie BIPOC sex workers, and I'm also a member of Duke Seattle.
Nikkita Oliver, I am co-executive director of Creative Justice, and I am an organizer with Decriminalize Seattle and King County Equity Now.
If you could tell me a little bit about the organizations that you're with and where people could be putting their attention and time and focus and energy right now.
Well, I could shout out a few organizations that we could be putting more like spotlight on. I'd say Utopia, Law Block, Clear the Land, Trans Women of Color Solidarity Network. What else is there? Black Trans Task Force, and AAOC. And then what was the other question?
Just where people should be focusing their attention and time right now.
Oh, well, I mean, I feel like often folks don't talk about rest and healing. I think, especially being Black, thinking about our history, we were often told when to eat, when to sleep, when to rest, and so it's revolutionary to heal and to take time for yourself to reduce your workload. I think a lot of times people don't realize that this work is a slow marathon. It's not a race. It's always going to be here. A lot of things will not be done in our time, and some things will be done in our time. So those are revolutionary things, and they're for you. It's not just, they're things that are done for you. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is that and for other people to focus on and to work on is about who is in the room and who's not in the room, and when we're talking about Black lives. And so when I'm talking about it, I'm talking about people like me. I was a sex worker for 5 years. I'm non-binary. My dad was an immigrant. I am bipolar. I have almost been houseless multiple times in my life. And so when I'm talking about those types of people, I'm always hearing around in Seattle that people are wanting to stand in solidarity with us, yet we're not in the room. And so what I'm looking for people to do is when I need them to focus on the fact that when they are asked to be in the room, to look around and read the room and just to see who is in the room, and to demand that if we're not in the room and we're not visible, if we're not on the boards, if we're not in the room, that you demand not to meet. You demand not to have those interviews. You demand not to meet with the mayor. You demand to not do any of those things until we're there. It's not enough to stand in solidarity when we're absent and we're being killed oftentimes, and it's going unnoticed. So that's my focus. That needs to be everyone's focus. That's what I think that we need to focus on: healing, rest, and real, true inclusivity.
Sherae, what about you?
I don't want to recreate or duplicate anything that Evana put energy into saying, but I will say, if you are not part of the African diaspora, and you want to know how to plug in, it's really easy. Just figure out what you are most rich in when it comes to resources, whether that be money or time or a special skill set, and offer that up and availability versus putting more labor on the organizers or the organizations that are in the front line by asking them how they can be useful. You are demanding emotional labor from someone to assess you and trust you inside of our work, and that's not okay. Kind of the whole point of this is saying it's not okay to demand free labor of us and to dehumanize us and see us as free labor. Figure it out for yourself, or just hand money over and shut the fuck up.
Nikkita.
I really love that Evana brought up a really intersectional definition of inclusivity, and oftentimes white supremacy and capitalism makes us feel like because they want to have the meeting right now, we have to have the meeting right now. And I really want to like undergird that point, but also that accountability for folks like myself. There are a lot of, light-skinned folks with privilege who do get invited to tables, or people with wealth or nonprofit privilege who get invited to meetings. And I think right now, as we're at this incredible pivotal moment in our movement, where there is a significant amount of people power, now is not a time to allow the institution to drive our timetable or what our meetings look like or who is in the room. This is actually a moment when the people have a significant amount of power, and when we get invited to those tables, we should push back. We should, say no, let's not have this meeting, and if they force the meeting, we should be finding ways to make those meetings transparent and accountable, whether that's through live streaming or live tweeting, or putting the entire conversation out, being transparent about who invited you, how you were invited, what you were told the intent of the meeting is, because, if the folks most impacted are not at the table, then what we're doing is reaffirming the way that white supremacy continues to restructure itself and keep those most impacted by the various isms as far away from power as possible. And really the way that we need to address power is to call and account for the proximity power tends to create from it for itself from the people most impacted. And that needs to be decreased. So one way to do that is, if you're one of those folks who get invited into the room a lot, look and see who's not there, call that out, call those people. I mean, I think what's been really significant about the moment we're in is we have been building very close new relationships with each other, and as a result of those relationships, when we notice that someone's not in the room, for example, like Black trans folks have not been invited to the table, and as a community, we're committed to making sure that the folks we're in relationship with who are running really important, really dynamic organizations that focus on Black trans women, that those folks know, and that we make sure we don't go to meetings that they're not included in. The other thing I would say is, this is not a time for reforms. There are going to be a lot of reforms offered by elected or by people who have institutional power or class power or racial power. And now is not a time for incremental change. It is actually a moment where we are making significant strides forward. I could not imagine even last year defund the police being a mainstream conversation, and it is a mainstream conversation. So we really need to be committed to the demands of the movement, the vision of the movement. We could be making leaps forward in our lifetime that maybe we never thought could happen. And I think to tie this to the marathon conversation, it is a marathon. And there are going to be moments in marathons where we can sprint, and there are going to be moments in marathons when we need to slow down and take our strides. Right now is an opportunity for us to sprint, and so let's not get in the way of this dynamic work that's happening. Let's also do it as a team. If this is a relay race, we need to remember that sometimes you got to hand off the baton to the people who have the expertise, the information, who are building the power. And so if I were to focus on anything tangible, in addition to what Sherae said about recognize where you have power, where you have privilege, where you have resource, really focus in on these council members. Whoever is your council member of your district, be calling them, be emailing them, be letting them know that when election season comes around, you will be holding them accountable, but that right now is the moment to defund the police and invest in community-based public health and public safety structures as we as impacted community members are directing.